We lost our spirituality as a people, as a civilization in general. Our sense with our connectivity with something that's transcendent.
Everyone thinks they're enlightened. Not everyone, but some think they're enlightened until they go home to family.
But the greatest pleasure in the world that we experience is the absence of self in the experience.
The journey of life is to see old pastures with new eyes.
Whatever you see is just seeing it. Right? That's not the problem. The problem is never what you see. It's how you see it. The problem is never the thing in itself. It's how you're experiencing it.
Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. Hi, I'm sitting here with Rav Pinson. Hi, Rav Pinson.
Hi.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem, yes.
But before we go in, I don't know why this thought,
Yeah.
it popped into my head last night, just popped into my head again when I said your name. So when I was a kid growing up in Crown Heights, they playing with animals or seeing animals that were not kosher was frowned upon. You're familiar with this?
Yeah.
Your name is beer.
Yeah.
What's going on?
You mean the discrepancy between playing with animals and...
I mean, we won't look at a picture. We'll name our kid it. It seems... Maybe I shouldn't say it. I'm curious from curiosity. I'm just wondering.
First of all, the idea is original idea from the Rebbe. The Rebbe, like, it's not, there's no real sources before this, that children should not look at the animals. There isn't actually no source for this. Meaning it's based on ideas, but there's no like clear halachic or other previous source that says you should make sure your children don't play with stuffed animals that look like other animals. The rationale that the Rebbe gave was that we are very much affected by what we see, certainly children, not even on a conscious level, but more on a subliminal level. We pick up messages, and certain animals that maybe have like aggressive nature, if you surround the child with aggressive nature, I know like a lot of Western ways of portraying these animals are always trying to make them more docile and more friendly. That's
like a teddy bear. It's
correct, right? Exactly. So there is this way of anthropomorphizing them into the way that they're humans and they're very kind. And this is not disparaging of God animals. It's actually animals are perfect. Every animal is exactly perfect. The only imperfection in creation is us. Everything that Hashem created in the world, everything God created in this world is doing exactly what it's doing. But there are certain natures that have aggressive natures, which translate into human experience. And the animal experience it is what it is. But there's no judgment of nature. There's no morality in nature. But in human experiences, there is this idea of that we are affected by the things that we eat, by the things that we surround ourselves energetically, and therefore, like this idea of trying to surround a child with only images that are more docile, more energetically less aggressive was the idea. But there, actually, when he spoke about it, he said also children can go to the zoo or to see animals in nature state. It's not like it was against animals. It's more, how do you create, what is the environment that you're creating for a child in the first experiences of life that is going to be the most holy and pristine, to protect that. So that's what I'm saying. So you're saying as to how with names. So names, a lot of Jewish names, it goes back even to the times of the Torah. The Shvatim are all the tribes of Yaakov, the sons of Yaakov are all described as a particular animal trait. They're symbolic of a particular animal
and none
trait.
of them kosher.
And none of them kosher, correct. So,
none of them kosher?
No, not mostly not kosher, correct.
Okay.
Snakes and things like that. But zev, but wolf. But it's a heightened sensitivity. I would also say that maybe it's like a precursor for we're leaving the age of information that's gathered through the left part of the brain, and we're entering, like in the development of human history, we started off with pictures. That's the way language is originally as pictures. The left part of the brain was not really developed. So language, that's one of the big revolutions of human evolution is.
All right, here we go. It's an ad, but it's not an ad because I was paid. It's an ad as an expression of love and appreciation for someone who did a lot for me and this podcast specifically. I'm talking about Ryan Carter from Scarlet Row. Many of you may know Ryan because he was a familiar face in the early days of the podcast, but much more than being a familiar face, he was kind of the juice behind the podcast from the very first day I had the idea. He's the one who pushed it from not just online webinars, but for consistent content, then going from audio to video. Everything you see here was his concept, his idea, and his execution. In addition to this podcast, Ryan has done a ton of work for me in my companies, from creative design, photography, brand strategy, brand development, creating video content, creating presentations, photography, and much, much more. So you name it, in that space, you want to create content, he's your guy. Even if your idea is just an idea and you don't have it all worked out, bring it to Ryan. He'll help turn that idea into something you can be proud of. Reach out to Ryan at scarletroad.com.
Not only is depictions of images, but to convey an idea. So let's say you had a cow and I had a camel and we wanted to exchange. In a very primitive way of language, it was a picture. You had a cow, a picture of a cow, you had a picture of a camel, and we had to change them. And then I know that I have to give you a camel for the cow. Then human civilization started developing as proper civilization, we call civilization, which is interaction, creativity, and living in amongst people together as a communities, was through language, the possibility of conveying ideas. And that was very much a left brain activity. So that's where language developed. And in the course of that, of the development of the human species, we developed very good understandings or ways of communicating and creativity on the left side of the brain, but we also lost the right part of the brain. Which, what I mean by that is that we lost our intuition, our sense of transcendence or prophetic visual. The prophets, like a prophet, is someone that's seeing a vision, not specifically hearing a particular voice that's telling him something. It's a certain type of vision. A prophet is someone that has a heightened sense of.
And you're saying that's right brain?
That's the right part of the brain. The right part of the brain is generally connected more with the creative part of the brain. The left part of the brain is connected with language. So, for example, if a person has, let's say, God forbid, a person has a stroke in the left part of the brain, they lose language. A person has a stroke in the right part of the brain, they lose a sense of wholeness, of like they won't get a phrase like "you are what you eat" if a person has a damaged right brain, because you're not. It's not linguistically. It doesn't linguistically make sense. You are what you eat, but or whatever, any type of colloquial type of phrase. But it's, if you take it in its entirety,
like a metaphor.
A metaphor, exactly. They don't get metaphor and allegory. Correct. That's correct. So what happened with civilization is we became very empirical, very scientific. This is actually a good thing also. And, all the medical breakthroughs and technology breakthroughs is all left brain. But we also, because of that, we lost our spirituality as a people, as a civilization in general. Our sense with our connectivity with something that's transcendent, something that's numinous.
And you got here from the pictures of animals.
Yeah.
For kids.
No. Yeah. So I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to that. I'm sorry. This is a long-winded.
No, it's good.
Long-winded response.
It's a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just go with it.
We don't have to cut to commercials.
Okay, fine. So what I'm saying is that in order to reclaim that more prophetic, intuitive type of mind, which is more like a prophetic type of consciousness, we need to develop further our right parts of the brain. And as a civilization, we're moving from an information age, which is gathered through the left part of the brain, to depictions. Today, most people learn their information actually through seeing. Not like a podcast, but even a podcast would be like something similar to that, which is but certainly through film or things like that, which you're gathering information through a narrative that's being told, through a story. This is actually seen from a big cosmic, big picture story. It's a return to prophecy, or it's a return to the possibility of prophecy, a development of imagination, a development of the capacity to visualize, to see things from that perspective. Sort of the marriage of these two things will be the perfect state, where we can marry the visual with the audible, these two.
So what did it look like before? Meaning, I understand now what the world looks like, where there's a very heavy focus on logic and.
Yeah. Well, so if you want to go like this, you want to say it like this. The Greeks basically, all of Western civilization is basically a footnote to Aristotle. I don't know if you're familiar a little with the Greek philosophers, but there was Aristotle was the first one to say that whatever you see is real. There's nothing else real besides what you're experiencing. Only what is empirically real. There's no ideas that stand outside the human experience of seeing. Has to be, or hearing. It has to be actually a tangible experience.
So we want to be able to measure it.
You want it to, yeah, it has to be
If you
measured.
can't measure it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, if you can't measure it, it can't exist. So there's no.
I thought he was smart. Okay.
He was, yeah, he was obviously very intelligent. The Rambam writes that he was close to prophecy, which means he was that close, but he didn't get the prophecy, which means that prophecy is the ability to intuit, to sense, to hear something that is not necessarily being empirically proven. That's a prophetic sense, and all of Western civilization is founded on the basic philosophical principles of Aristotle. All modern philosophy and modern science is essentially based on this way of thinking.
And you're treating that as left brain.
I'm treating that as left brain, correct?
So prior to that, right brain would look like what kind of society?
In one way, very primitive, because there's no understanding of life, right? You can't, like when it thunders, there's no interpretation of what that means. Like, how does it thunder? So if it's thundering, it's probably the gods, quote unquote, are like angry, and then with lightning. So there is one, on one sense, is very primitive and very steeped in an idol worship reality. But on the other hand, the flip side of that is that people were very spiritual, which means maybe they gave too much spirituality to every single phenomenon that they experienced, but they were also open to having dialogue with something that's transcendent of them. So the world was a much more magical place, and the Western civilization killed the magic, and that's helpful. Like if God forbid, if you have a toothache and you go to a magical doctor, it's a lot, maybe it's not going to help you, but if you went to someone that actually studied medicine, it will. So there's a lot of advancements. Okay, the fact that we're sitting here having conversations, all because of the left brain development. But we lost that intuitive, prophetic, more heightened states of consciousness. And the way the world is moving towards that direction of more visual shows us that we're actually entering into a more prophetic age.
You're saying in the last 30, 40,
Correct.
50 years.
Correct.
And you're envisioning a
synthesis between these two. That would be the ultimate harmony. If you're familiar a little with the Hebrew alphabet a little bit, go
ahead.
Okay.
You can go anywhere.
So if you look at the aleph beis, it's read from right to left, okay, which is very interesting, instead of from left to right, which there's a subtle shift in your actual physical positioning of your head when you're reading from right to left, right? So if you're reading from right to left, you're going to turn your head towards the right. Right. So automatically what you're doing is they're subtly shifting your everything that we do in our body has an immediate effect on our consciousness. So this notion that they're two separate things is not true. That our consciousness and our body are one and the same. So an effect one, cause of one affects the other very, very, very clearly. So when you're moving your head into one direction, you're actually shifting your consciousness to the right side of the brain. So you're reading from right to left, which you're reading letters, but you're shifting it from a right perspective. And when you write Hebrew letters, you move from left to right. So let's say if you're writing a letter aleph, for example.
Oh, right.
You actually start from the left side. So you're starting from the left, and that's the way you move to write the letter. But when you're reading the other direction. You're following? So the actual writing of the letter is left to right, but the reading is right to left.
And English,
by the way, you're reading it from left to right, but how do you...
And you're writing left to right. Okay.
Yeah, you're writing left to right. It's always a left to right thing. So the left to right idea is that you're activating the left part of the brain stronger, and that's what you're saying. This is the process we're doing. Now, this is very subtle, and you just it's barely measurable if you want, but it is subtle. It does have a subtle, different way of relating to it. Once you're starting to write one way and to read the other way, what you're doing in a very subtle way when you're doing this with the Hebrew language is you're activating both parts. You're trying to make some type of synthesis
like an
between
NDR session.
Yeah, exactly. You're actually turning your head back and forth, correct? And that's what you're doing. That's why the writing of even Hebrew letters This is, by the way, this is a question you asked about the animals, but the writing of Hebrew letters becomes in itself a spiritual practice, like literally writing letters or transmuting letters or serif of letters, combination of letters, because of that idea also. Because what you're doing is you're moving the mind in different ways, subtly moving it back and forth, and somehow it can induce you into a higher
But
state of consciousness.
The reason we write left to right in Hebrew is, and that's the way it was taught. It could have been taught to us the other.
I know, but it was done intentionally.
Got it.
So the Mekubalim say, the Kabbalists say that you write left to right because that's Gvur to Chesed. So that's the left side to the right side. So, and then when you're reading, it's Chesed to Gvur. So like it depends how but you're trying to activate one or the other or both together. Getting back to this idea of imagery, and why we started this conversation, I think the Rebbe anticipated bringing a spiritual master in that way, anticipated the revolution that was going to happen, started happening during his lifetime, but certainly afterwards, of people learning through imagery. And sort of, it's a foundational idea that you should make sure that the imagery that you're taking in should be positive. That's a blanket statement for everything. Like what we see will have an effect on us.
Right. He was communicating a subtlety or nuance.
Correct.
Be sensitive to this. Be
sensitive, especially moving forward. We are going to become very much inundated through imagery. Be sensitive to it, because some people, they wake up in the morning, look at their phone, and they see something terrible happening in the world, and they shut up the phone, fine, and then the rest of the day they're angry, and they're like, "Why am I angry today?" Well, that's the first images you took into your mind, and that's the first interpretation. That's the foundation of everything that you're experiencing.
I saw this study they did where they showed, I don't remember how many pictures it was, let's say 100 or 1,000 in very quick succession.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, faster than, you can actually name each one. And then asking people afterwards, okay, what did you see? A boat, a car, a plane? And people can remember very few of them.
Right.
But then putting up two pictures side by side and saying, was this one of them? Was this one of them? Was it? And when they go in the second way of remembering a picture, did you see that before? It's near 100%.
There you go. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Yeah, we take in billions of imagery every single day.
Right. It cements in our brain in a different way.
Correct. And it lodges into our consciousness, not in a verbal way. So therefore, we don't know how to give it context. Like if someone tells you something insulting and you heard it, right, and it registered, okay, then throughout the day you feel like a little hurt, you know why. But if you see something and it's an image and it's very quick and it lodged into like a level of your subconscious, like how do you know that it's even there? And then you're walking around with some sort of frustration. And it will show up, by the way, most imagery that we have throughout the day shows up in our dreams. That's the way the system expunges and gets rid of all this stuff that we see. So it'll have to like regurgitate and like come up to some level of your subconscious, from subconscious to your conscious. And that's, that's the film that you see by night, more or less.
Is what you saw during the day.
Yeah.
Or prophecy.
Or prophecy, exactly. Prophecy happens if you are able to control your imagery, your inner image.
Meaning?
Most people are, this is the koach hadimyon, like the power of imagination. So the Rambam, Maimonides, has a very clean definition. He says, it's like a horse, and either you're riding the horse or the horse is riding you, which means it has a lot of potential, the power of a visualization, the power to imagine, but either you become consumed by it and it just takes you wherever it goes. And that's like externally induced. And it just seduces you to all different types of strange,
like fantasy,
the world of fantasy, correct? And so fantasy is the negative part of it. That's why the Sephora and other serious commentators write in the beginning of the Torah where it speaks about the snake, that the snake is fantasy. That's not actually what it is. It's the world of fantasy. It's the world of of the possibility of something that's not really possible, but it's externally created. It's not you didn't create it. Imagery, if it's done correctly, is like the skin of your flesh. Like the flesh would be the thought process, and then you put the skin. This is that reason writes this, Isaac Luria. That it'll be like the skin of your flesh, which means I have an idea, and then I use my power of imagination to imagine that idea coming into fruition or being experienced. And that's the way things become really ingrained when we can visualize that. And the more we could control our power of imagination, which means we are the controller of that picture, of that narrative, the more we make ourselves into a filter through which higher imagery can come through us, and we have the ability to actually translate that information in a correct way. So if I have no control over my subconscious, or my power of imagery, and I'm bombarded in a dream with maybe some prophetic insight, the time it gets to my consciousness, I have no control of that it becomes completely muddy, that I have no idea what it meant.
Right. The interpretation becomes impossible.
Impossible. Correct. But if you're sensitive, that there's always a certain, just like there's the experience in life. Let's think about it this way. There's the immediate experience of life, which has no narrative and has no picture. It's just the experience of actually being in the experience. And then we lay over every experience with a certain conception of the experience, or a certain understanding of experience. Let's say
like a narrative of it?
A narrative, correct. We create a narrative. Let's say I'm drinking a cup of water, right? So there's two things that are happening. I'm actually experiencing the drinking the cup of water, which is a physical phenomenon. There's no interpretation to that. It just is me drinking water. And then there's, I was thirsty. Now I'm quenched my thirst. There's a narrative. Oh, it's so great to have this cup of water. So there's certain projections that we constantly project over stories. And then the question is, are we in control of that projection? Do we control it? Do we decide how we're going to experience this world? Or is it all because of all the stimulus that's happening to us that we automatically have that story?
And how do we know?
If you could pause and stop the story.
If we can recognize that it's a story.
If you can stop. Yeah. Could you just like take a cup of water and say like, we do this all the time, because a lot of things people think are very, very high levels of spirituality. It's not actually, because every person does it. Every person meditates. Every person has focus. Every person has mindfulness. Everyone. And so the question is what? Let's say, do you enjoy music?
I do, actually.
Okay. Let's say you're listening to music. Okay. It's like the best possible music you're listening to. You have your headphones and you're completely lost in the experience. And for like 5 minutes or 2 minutes or a minute, you're like really deeply into the music that you completely forgot that you're actually listening to the music. Right? You become so one with the experience.
Right. You become the music.
You become the music. And then you get out of that and you're like, oh, that was nice music. It was interesting music. And then you have a whole analysis of the music.
That was meditation.
Yeah, that moment was one with the experience. You just had a real experience without a narrative. You just one with the experience itself. You're one with life. And when you're one with life, there's no overlay of that experience. There's no interpretation. In fact, the greatest pleasure in the world, which is counterintuitive, but the greatest pleasure in the world that we experience is the absence of self in the experience. When we let go of ourselves in the experience.
All right, that's what we're trying to do, is lose oneself.
Correct. In the experience. So like what the experience is, and just be in the experience. That's unity. That's like divine. That's Veikos. That's what it is. Right.
Flow or lost track of time.
Correct.
All the same.
Correct. So you're asking about how do you know? Well, if you can stop yourself, if you recognize that it's a film, like could you?
Right.
I think, by the way, even like you're walking down the street and you're seeing a lot of things going on, just close your eyes for a second. Like all of a sudden, that whole story just ended. Like where did that go? It disappeared. Not only did it disappear from your view, it actually disappeared from you. So technically, it disappeared.
Until you open your eyes again. And
then it reappears.
Right.
But it's a reappearance. It's not that it was there when you're not there. The world doesn't exist outside of us. There's no subject and object in this creative story. There's no separation between me and you and me and the experience. There's only the experiences that is happening. Life is happening, right? This is the oneness of Hashem. Life is just one. It's right. All the separation that creates all the drama and the trauma and all the neurosis that people experience is because we're living in the place of the separation.
So then we attach stories to it.
We attach stories. We have to. So, okay, this is my story. This is me. I'm this person. You're this person. This is my story. If I insult you that you're not a good podcaster, then you're going to be you understand? I created a story. Then I get like all defensive about the story. Then I'm fighting for the story. There's no story. Just life. This is happening.
Right. Just this. Just right this. Here, right now. Which we don't even know if it really exists. How do we know this is happening?
You can't know, of course, because by knowing, that's already an overlay of the experience. You just are the experience. You're not knowing that you're having the experience. You're actually having the experience. That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Understood, right? So if you're listening to music and you're lost in that space, the second you ask the question of
Yeah, you no longer
how do I
know.
know this is happening,
Correct. Then you're not there
you've
already.
lost
Correct. You lost the thread.
it.
Yeah.
So is the point to keep the thread?
The point is, this is a very good question, by the way. This is a very good question. The point is to get that state so real to you that anytime you're living through the experiences of life, you never get so entangled that you can't get yourself untangled. So there is like, I don't know, it's like a funny word to say, but there is the mediocrity of life. Of I'll give you maybe a better example. The Baal Shem Tov once said about himself. He said when he was younger, when he was in that state of dveikus, like real one, he said when he met people on the street, he couldn't talk to them. Because anytime he talked to them, he's like engaged in like the drama of life, and it just pulled him down. He said when he got older, he was able to do that. Like be that place and be present there also.
Oh, got it. Okay.
That's the kunst. That's the trick.
Right. To be in the space and not be able to pull out.
Correct.
Right. To sit on a mountaintop and not be pulled out.
That's nothing. That's not
to walk
Judaism.
down the street.
To walk down
see
the street.
someone in pain.
Correct.
Hear their struggles.
Hear the struggle. Feel their
Don't
pain.
get pulled out.
Yeah.
Right. That's hard.
That's life. That's like what Judaism is. That's like what Yiddishkeit is really about. That balance, which is not found in nowhere. It's a chiddush. It's a novelty, and I think it's also a novelty that Jews have to express to the world. That the world has to know this.
How would you say it?
Yeah.
Meaning comparing it to.
There's a lot of other traditions, lahavdil, that will speak about a type of transcendence of this world. That to get untangled from the trauma of existence, just even the trauma, not even if you're traumatized, just the trauma of existence,
right,
is to get off the wheel. It's just to get off this hamster wheel of
transcendent,
to transcend, to be in a place of the witness self, or in a Kabbalistic language we call like the das, the aid, the witness self, to observe self, and you're always good. You're just watching this thing passing by.
How is that different than the Baal Shem Tov interacting with people?
Because he got engaged.
Okay, so it's the witness self without engaging.
Yeah, right. You're witness self without engaging. Here you're getting engaged. Like I really feel your pain. I'm going to feel pain because I feel your pain. I'm choosing to enter into the place of the mediocrity, or the place of duality, if you wish, because I know that that's where you're at, and I want to be engaged with you in the place that you're at. And life happens in that place, like, marriage, children, family life. That's like part of that place. If you really want to know if a person's a real master, you have to really ask his wife.
Right.
Yeah, because otherwise, that's the place that life happens. Like, could you be in that place where life is really happening?
Yeah. Ram Dass said something similar. He says, everyone thinks they're enlightened. Not everyone, but
right.
Someone can think they're enlightened until they go home to family.
Exactly. That's not good. Yeah, that's really the point.
Right. So where life happens, can we still be in that?
Could you still be in a place of dveikus where life is happening, in the place of unity where life is happening? And that's like the merging of the yesh and I. These are Kabbalistic words between nothingness and emptiness, or fullness and emptiness.
So you're saying in other major religions, this concept of,
it's either going to be very much focused on action based, like, doing kindness and charitable acts, which is beautiful. I'm not putting this down, but that's going to be the focus, or it's going to be a pulling away totally from life, like to live celibate and to live on top of a mountain, live detached from family. That would be the way to untangle yourself from the drama of life. And in Yiddishkeit, that's not an option.
When you say Yiddishkeit, but it feels to me also like the difference between the ghetto Jew and the Chabad Jew. There's a form of detachment there too. No?
Yeah, but
the ghetto Jew say I'm going to.
Yeah, that's culture insularity. That's a different thing. There's certain sects of Jews that felt that in order to hold on to their own inner culture, you create an insular secular culture. So like secular culture has nothing to offer, so we'll create an own insular culture. That's one. I'm not necessarily saying that you have to be totally engaged in every single modern phenomena that's happening. Like you have to be up to date with all the film and music. And that's, if you want, that's not even that's not the conversation. It's the question is, how do you relate to life in general? Are you a person that's always looking to escape it, to be in a place of transcendence, in that inner place of peace where everything's always perfect and whole? Or are you willing to go into the mud, into the place where, to the grime, to the place where there's actually life is lived in a different way, and to be there?
Okay, so while it sounds good, I grew up here,
Yeah,
right in Crown Heights,
yeah.
and I feel like being in the grime was more of the message than transcending. Do you know what I mean by that? Meaning,
Yeah, I
you're
know.
talking about
Yeah, I'm holding a duality together, a
right,
paradox.
but it feels like
I
I
think
felt like I got one
I
of those.
I totally hear what you're saying. I think there's something very interesting about Judaism, which is people don't understand. I mean, a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't really understand. Is that especially when you're talking about a religious Jewish community, 99% of the people that are involved in this type of community didn't have a choice or didn't make a choice to join the community. So it's more like a culture phenomenon. It's like, this is the way your parents practice. This is the way your siblings practice. And this is the way I'm going to practice. Where in other, let's say Lahavdil, if you say, let's say a person becomes a Buddhist monk or something. So this person is going to choose a certain pathway of spirituality. So therefore this person will be very much more dedicated to their spiritual practice than the average guy that's born into a Jewish community. So that's the difference. So therefore it's like very hard to judge like from the collective, besides the fact that always when you're dealing with a collective, that's what generally happens. Most people just want to deal with life. They're not interested in, there's like a hierarchy of needs. So like if you're dealing with basic food on the table, it's very hard for a person to evolve to that place where they're starting to think about more spiritual matters. So
even if the language someone is surrounded by is all spiritual.
Correct. You end up interpreting the language very, very pedestral. You interpret spiritual language as a thing. It's like Atzilus is Atzilus. That's like a high spiritual world. Like, no, Atzilus is actually a state of consciousness. So you can't speak about something if you don't know what you're talking about. So what is that? So you're going to repeat a word and say, okay, we learned that Atzilus comes to be, but what does that mean? Like, how are you experiencing it? What does it actually mean to you? And for most people, it's just a word. So I understand the phenomenon, but someone once said, unfortunately, you can't judge Judaism by Jews. So
right, I wasn't saying it from that perspective. What I'm saying is that it wasn't a knock on. I'm saying that it when you take the two aspects of it seems like there was
more focus on the other.
Right. As opposed to, say, Buddhism, right, which I haven't interacted with it deeply, but a lot of the meditation you see in the U.S. comes from those, comes from those places, or going to yoga studios or other meditation practices or things like that, where there's a lot of messaging around the transcendence. Like that gets its eartime, so to speak. So that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I got it.
It almost didn't. I don't feel like it had its eartime.
You know what? It did have its eartime. It's just the way it was transmitted. The information was there. Like you were learning Hasidic text. I just think it was, again, not the knock or the way the average experience is it's information. You're learning it as information, not necessarily tools for transformation. So when you're learning information, okay, might as well learn this or learn something else. But if someone told you like what you're going to learn this mimer now is going to be transformative, that everything you're looking for is like inner peace and harmony, and you're going to experience it through learning what Atzilus is and what Atzilus within you is, what that experience is, I think you would be.
So you're talking about a mimer. Obviously, today my experiences are different where I'm learning some of these, kind of revisiting some of these texts myself. But you're talking about that as an experience, not as a learning.
Yeah, so this is not a learning. It's not an intellectual activity. It's a tool for dvekas. It's a tool to reach transcendence. It's not another
idea we're
understanding. Yeah, it's not another idea. No, it's not. It shouldn't.
So what does that look like? The experience of it.
Whatever you're learning, you're learning about that you have a soul. What does it mean? Like, what does it mean to have a soul? Like, what does soul mean to me? Like, you have to ask yourself, like, when it's saying these words, what is it telling me?
Not from a
Not from a purely philosophical idea that, oh, there's an idea of a soul and there's 5 levels of soul and there's all, okay, fine. Okay. You got the information correctly. But like, what does that mean to you? And how do you experience it? Because these are living words. These are living words. So living words means they were lived by a teacher that experienced them, and he spoke them into words, his experience.
I heard from someone that the other half of Tanya, that the Alter Rebbe said, this is Tanya, the other half is music or something.
Correct. You can't understand Tanya without music.
So what does that mean practically? What is that?
It means you need a soul. You need a soul to access this information. It's not left brain. It is also left brain, but it's the expansion or the implosion of left brain to taking your left intellectual process of understanding things to its furthest conclusion until you reach a point where it just transcends into the place of ayin, to nothingness.
So you're going through the understanding.
In Chabad, that's the idea. That's the Alter Rebbe's idea. The Alter Rebbe, there was a big debate, like in the beginning of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings. Chassidus was experiential. That's the fundamental idea of, and experiential in a way that's not transcendental of experience, but within the experience itself. Whatever you're experiencing, experience deeply. Like if you're having an emotion, be there fully in that emotion till that emotion becomes something that's transcendent. I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but what the Baal Shem Tov wanted is that every single thing, every single human capacity should be lived to its fullest. And when you reach its fullest experience of this capacity, you'll actually connect to the divine. I'll give you an example.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. But if you go to its core and to its fullest, for example, there's a story that's told over in Reishis Chachma, which is like a classic book of Musar, that the Chassidic rabbis love this story, where there is this very simple guy. He sees a princess walking through his town. You know the story? Familiar with the story? He sees a princess walking through his town, and he screams out there, "If only I could be with you for one night." He's a very simple guy. That's what he wants. And the princess says, this is a Reishis Chachma, so this is like a very serious text. Leo de Vidas, a student of Ramak, 1500s, says that she says, yeah, in the cemetery, which she meant like, next life. It's not happening.
Right, over my dead body.
Over my dead body, correct. Something like that. But he didn't understand that, right? He didn't have the right part of the brain. So he didn't get that, that messaging. So he thought he actually has to go to the cemetery. So he goes to the cemetery. Remember, he sees this princess for like a moment. He did, like she was just passing. And he's sitting there all night and he's waiting for her. He's like pining for this woman that's going to come. And he's sitting there and his heart is really open with love to feel her, to be with her. And night after night, he's sitting there, night after night, pining for her, longing for her, yearning for her. And of course, the image of who she was starts fading because he doesn't really have a real image of her. So first is some type of silhouette of an image, then the image becomes like completely like transparent, then the image disappears. And he's just left with like this
feeling,
infinite amount of love. And the love just starts expanding. He becomes the greatest love in the universe. And the story ends that he becomes a great tzaddik, like a very righteous man in the cemetery, still waiting for her. And people are coming to ask him blessings. That's taking the feeling, and if you're going to enlarge that feeling to its maximum, you're going to get to a place of transcendence. You're just going to be the greatest lover. So any experience that you have, feel it very deep or experience it very deeply. So in a lot of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, that became more, whether through music or dance or going out into the forest, like these types of embodied experience, also in the body itself. For the Alter Rebbe, who is a very big intellectual, I don't have to tell you that. For the Alter Rebbe, he said that if you're going to leapfrog the intelligent part of yourself, would say, okay, I'm a heart person. I just want to really be connected on a heart level. Okay, but your mind is going to play tricks on you because your mind is not going to be in the same place where your heart is. So maybe for the experience itself, it's going to be very pleasant, but tomorrow you're going to wake up the same person because the new narrative is going to come up. So he said, okay, let's get the mind engaged.
Okay, so bring it through to its full capacity.
Yeah, do it to the full capacity. And in spiritual language, this is like get it to the place of chachma, the place of like highest levels of intuition, and then it implodes into ayin, to nothingness. So you take the mind and you use it fully and engage in the process of understanding until the point where it's beyond your understanding and you're left with the previous Rabbi Rayat speaks about, like you're left with the energy of the thought, like not with the thought itself, like the idea beyond the thought, and then you're left with the energy itself. No thought. Pure thoughtlessness.
Napoleon Hill has a concept in his book, Think and Grow Rich, Sexual Transmutation,
Yeah.
which sounds very
Uh-huh.
similar of taking, right, the sexual energy, detaching it from however it was generated, and then just expanding that feeling until it's creative energy.
Correct. So this is a very, very deep teaching from the Baal Shem Tov about this. I actually just spoke about it a few weeks ago when I was talking about Moedim. It's very subtle, and it's not necessarily for every person to understand this, because people are going to take it in the wrong way. But it's about taking the most raw energy of the body and using that same visceral raw energy for transformation, instead of using it directed to a particular person, which means almost a depletion of that energy, because the moment it's released, it ends.
Right.
You actually use it to generate even more energy. And it's a whole process of how you bow, and it's through the spine, which is the snake energy. It's a whole like complicated thing that based on a very deep teaching from the Ari on Kavanas Ari on davening Shemoneh Esrei. But the Baal Shem Tov did this, and that's where the Baal Shem Tov talks. Which I don't want to say he got into trouble, but this is one of the teachings the Baal Shem Tov said, and people had issues with it. Smaller people had issues with this, but is that the Baal Shem Tov says that when a person daven, it's like intimacy. Like you have to experience intimacy. He says that's why people move their hands and shake, and then they stop shaking, because you're going through states of intimacy. And what he's really saying is, on a deep level, it is. If you can be that place, you can actually experience what it means to be ultimate pleasure, not pleasure, ultimate timing, which is the highest level of pleasure. Ultimate pleasure is not localized in the body. Like if you have pleasure in your foot, or pleasure is someone's tickling on your foot, or you have pleasure in another part of the body, it's local. And so the experiencer is having a localized experience of pleasure, and it's through an experience that's also very particular in the experience. But if you have divine pleasure, if you can get to that place of divine pleasure, it's an experience throughout the entire body into something that's infinite. That's the highest level of pleasure.
Right. I'm going back to the story where the princess is walking down the street. This guy sees her, and now through her comes to him this divine energy.
Correct.
When he imposes the narrative on her,
correct,
then that's the
mess up.
Right. That's the screw up.
That's the mess up.
The experience itself of it.
You know, there's the Rabbunim of Pishcha, one of the very famous Chassidic rabbis, a very wise person. He said something like this. He says a horse is just a horse. Now he uses that as a metaphor, which is whatever you see is just seeing it. Right? That's not the problem. The problem is never what you see; it's how you see it. The problem is never the thing in itself; it's how you're experiencing it.
100%.
So you take the most raw thing that you're experiencing. You just overlaid a negative narrative on it. Therefore, you're struggling and you have to untangle yourself. But stop. It's just a horse.
So how does a concept like tznius jive with this concept?
Well,
you understand what I'm asking? Right?
Yeah, I do. But I would say like this. First of all, there's a few elements of here that there's in the conversation of tznius, there's two people there, right? So there's the object and the subject. Okay, the person that's seeing and what's being seen. So for the person that's seeing, the question is on what level are you at, that you can actually see things in its purity in a way without any narrative. Could you see beauty without a story? Because most people, when they see beauty, the immediate response to beauty or something that's attractive is, how could I own it? How could I get it? How could I be with it? Or how could I ride the horse? That's like right. That's the immediate reaction. So Rabbi Akiva has a teaching like this. Rabbi Akiva says that it's a Gemara, it's from the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva says that if you bump into, let's say it's talking about a guy. So if you like turn a corner, Karen Zavis, like at a corner, and you see a beautiful woman, you should say a bracha, shekacha ba'olam, that Hashem created beautiful, like Hashem created this in this world. What Rabbi Akiva is saying is, sometimes when you bump into something, the corner is a metaphor. He's saying when you bump into something before it triggers anything else, you can actually appreciate things shakacha, that this is beautiful in this world. The problem is the moment afterwards. Now, could you live that all times? That's the state of Adam and Eve in the paradise, right? They were not ashamed of each other. That's what it means. They were living in that state of not no desire to own, just to experience. If you look actually the way the Torah describes,
So not localizing God.
yeah, not localizing even your experience, right?
Right.
Oh, that is beautiful. No, that's not. That's part of the beauty of everything, right? The moment you start, and the moment you see that it's toiv l'meichel, like it's good for food. This is what the story is. Like then in the Garden of Eden, they see, oh, it's good for food. It's not nechman l'einayim. It's not beautiful to behold, but it's good for food. That's already a grabbiness. That's already a narrative. I want that. What do you need it for? That's everything's beautiful. God created a beautiful world, and there's beautiful things. I thank God, and you have to make a blessing for all the beauty in the world. Just stop trying to own everything. Stop this. Take control.
You're saying about tznius is a subject.
Okay. So tznius, that's the one level. So the question is, could we control that if you're in that state? Then, in terms of the person projecting, whether it's a man or a woman, there's a fascinating teaching. So the Gemara says, the Chazal tells like this, that it was Miriam is considered one of the most beautiful women that ever lived. And the Gemara says something very interesting. The Gemara says that if someone sees Miriam, he sees Miriam, this beautiful woman, is Mevi Doron L'Ishta, he brings a gift to his wife. Now, it doesn't say he brings a gift to Miriam. If a male sees Miriam, he brings a gift to his wife. So the Ishbitza says like this, what this means is, a person that's a real tsanua, I'm talking about, let's say me and you, if a person's real tsanua, a person that's a real tsanua, a person that's really modest, tsanua means hatzna, a person is walking with themselves. I'm not here to project something on myself, so to entice you into anything. I like to dress beautifully, or I like to have a nice house, or whatever the thing that I need. It has nothing to do with you. Whether I want to impress you or I care about you, it's nothing to do with you. It's all about me. When a person is a real tsanua, a person lives this way, when you see this person, the instinct of seeing this person will not be to try to own them, because they don't want to be owned. That's not what they're not projecting beauty to be owned. They're projecting beauty for beauty in their own sake. So when you appreciate beauty for their own sake, what are you going to do? If you're a man, you're going to bring a gift to your wife. Your father?
Say that again.
So,
I understand the concept of tznius.
Okay, so it's okay. So you're living for yourself. Okay, means that you're directed. Let's say you're dressing beautiful. Let's say you're a man. You're dressing beautifully. Yeah. Okay, fine. Why are you doing it? Because you like beautiful clothes. You like if it makes you feel better about yourself, whatever reason. Okay, you're dressing in beautiful clothes. You're walking down the street. If you're living with that state of consciousness of tznuah, it's guaranteed that the energy that you're kicking off is not energy that says, please take me, please own me, please buy me something. It's energy that says, I'm good without you. I'm fine.
And that's going to be received that way every
Correct.
time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to believe me. Just don't believe me in anything I'm saying. Try to think about it. Like if you
it's possible there's no one who's really operating at that level.
Correct. But if I'll tell you, let's say you see a child. Let's say a child is like, your little, I don't know if a little girl, 3-year-old girl, and she's running around with a dress, and she's like, she just loves it. She's like not trying to attract attention to her. She's just, when you look at her, no one, or something's not really bad with that person, but a healthy person looks at it, doesn't say, oh, she's a beautiful girl. It's like, she's a beautiful girl. Wow, that's beautiful. Beautiful things in the world. She's so cute. Right. That will trigger beauty in your mind. The appreciation of beauty. If you're a healthy person with a healthy relationship with your wife, and you think hopefully that your wife is beautiful, you're going to bring her a gift. It's going to trigger a relationship. You understand? It's not going to trigger owning that person. That's tznius. Tznius is really to live with a certain sense of being, I am for myself. I live for myself. I don't live to impress other people. Now, if it happens to be that I like a very big car, so what? That's it. That's I happen to like another car. But if I'm doing it just to impress the neighbors, then that's not sneeze.
Oh, okay. So you're
Right.
This changes sneeze.
Yeah.
And the way
sneeze means the way that the phrase of sneeze, the phrase that the whole word of sneeze comes from the book of Micha. It's hatznalechas in Hashem Elokecha. Hatznalechas means walk inwardly with God.
So how does an idea like that get drilled down into these laws? Like how did that process? How did it become distilled into?
Again,
was something lost in the process?
It was lost in the way it was taught, maybe. Like it became tznius means like the length of a skirt, right? And that's the definition of tznius. But tznius is not the length of the skirt. Tznius means a person is not trying to objectify their body. They're not living outwardly to show others how, if they're beautiful or not. They're living because they want to just be within themselves and they feel comfortable with that reality.
So how was that jump made? That idea became these specific laws. There were very wise and intelligent people which developed these.
Right. It was a way to say, like, if we're going to create this, first of all, tznius, let's really back this up. There was never like a laws that said exactly how long a skirt should be, or there was no like halachic rulings of this thing, like strict halachic rulings. Over time, like there's nothing in the Gemara that says how long or where. Like it's not really that conversation. A lot of the laws of tznius evolved from the society that people lived in. Like what was considered a person that's evocative, someone that's trying to evoke a certain reaction, how they're dressing, versus a person that's just living their life. And I think it depends. It was culturally conditioned a lot. People dressed generally more modest and 100 years ago. That's clear. But the idea of tznius was really like it was the idea of royalty, that a woman, particularly for a woman, with the idea of like a woman should dress in royalty. When you see someone that's dressed in royalty versus provocative, you have a different type of interaction with that. Royalty demands respect. It demands it demands a certain type of reverence. It's speaking about a different thing versus a person that's being wearing clothes for a different reason. And by the way, the laws of tznius applies to men as well. It's not a woman thing. It's a man thing as well.
You're saying this concept, meaning with men, it may apply more to the car we drive than the...
Correct. For tznius, exactly. Correct. Car we drive, the house we have, exactly. For more things like works. Yeah, but it's the same idea. Like,
the title.
Right. But think about it. Like how am I really hatznalechas Hashem Elokecha? I'm walking along with God. That's what I want. Is my life really like private? Like I really don't care what other people think about me and look at me and how they look at me. I'm just want to live my life.
Right. I like this explanation because at this one we all have work to do, so it's difficult to point the finger. Yeah.
Well, first of all, we should never point fingers, but you know that. I'm sure you know that. The only finger you can point is on yourself.
Right. What I'm saying is that when it's expressed in very clear lens of something,
right, and you can understand it for yourself.
Then that can this isn't
correct.
But when it's something more subtle and nuanced, that I'm sure all of us have varying levels of
correct. Everyone has various levels of being tznius and not being tznius. Correct.
Right. It's
a mindset. It's a way of being. It's a way of being in this world. Yeah.
And it can shift and it can expand.
And we change. And sure, you grow and you're different ages, different times in your life.
Right.
But maturity comes, like, I think as you grow older, you see like older people that don't stop caring. So that's, older people as they get older, they stop caring. They start saying things they shouldn't be saying. That's a level of like, okay, I'm very comfortable with myself. I don't have to like prove myself to anybody. I don't really care anymore.
It's a level of tznius.
It's a level of tznius.
Ironically,
exactly. Exactly. No, by the way, I don't want to get into this, but you can see even like older people, even the way they dress, like even if it's not like the same way they would, like an older person that dresses in a particular way, even though for a younger person it may not be tznius, but for an older person it is. It's not so. You know what I'm saying? It's like a different way. There's a certain way of being in this world. What are you projecting? Are you projecting like attraction? Is that what you want? Are you creating like attention to self? That's what you're at, or is it just like being myself? And it's, there's a Gemara that speaks about like it's like with men, like if you cover your bris, like you cover yourself when you're going to the mikvah on the way back or the way forward. Like in one way, it's like not considered tznius, But in the way back, it is because it's better not to cover it. It's like you're covering your bris. You shouldn't do that. Which the Shalom Kaddish says, it really, it depends on the setting. Like if there's a bunch of people doing something and all of a sudden you're covering yourself, that in itself is not tznius, right? If everyone's sitting in let's say swimming, I don't know, you're a bunch of friends, you're swimming, and you're sitting with like, a bathing suit and you're swimming, and this guy decides that he has to put on pants when he swims. That in itself is a way to
call attention.
Yeah, call attention to yourself. You're inside. So it's very subtle. Like, why are you wearing pants? Like, what? It's not good enough to wear a bathing suit? Oh, because because you think you understand? So it's like, it's very, it's much more subtle.
Right. It's a practice. It's
it's a way of being. Yeah.
Understood. So how did we get here? We got here from.
I have no idea. This is
a little bit.
About being fully in the emotions and being fully.
Oh, right, like that, right. So being able to take this.
Yeah.
You're saying with every one of these,
any experience that we're having, that's
can
really
be expanded fully into
something that's divine, something that's transcendent. Like any experience, whatever you're doing, I don't know, whatever you do in this world, can be something that ends in the finite expression of the experience, or expands into the infinite expanse of the experience. And that's where you're like touching something that's divine, something that's higher.
And you're talking even extreme negative feelings like anger, or maybe anger is more of a layered over feeling.
Exactly, but in anger itself, let's say for
anger
example,
is a story, maybe.
Exactly, but like Sefer Yetzirah talks about this ancient book of Kabbalah or of Judaism, speaks of every month has like a particular energy. Mm-hmm. So like it says like the month of Tevis, the energy of the month of Tevis is roigas, is anger. Like as if it's a good thing. Like this is a good thing.
Oh.
And the answer is, anger is not a negative thing. The narrative of anger is negative. Let's say you're angry. Let's say you got a person gets angry, right? So you get angry. Let's say someone insulted you. Okay. So you get angry and you're like worked up. Now there's two things that are happening. There's the sensation of anger and there's the narrative of anger. The narrative of anger, this guy told me this. Okay. That's terrible. That's you're like an idol worshiper. Fine. But the sensation of anger is like, I'm boiling. I'm like, my heart's palpitating. That's a good thing. Do something with it.
Right. It's a tremendous amount of energy.
It's a tremendous amount of energy. Do something. Who said that's negative? It's only negative because of the narrative. But once you strip the narrative from the sensation, do something. Well, you know what you can do now? You can probably like build a home. I don't know. You can do amazing stuff.
Right.
Or you can actually use it to I don't know. You can use this raw, powerful energy that your heart is palpitating, you're sweating, and you're really upset. Take that. Expand it, and use it for something positive.
Go to the cemetery.
Yeah, I don't know what you can do. Exactly. Do something positive. Don't try to deny the emotion. See, that would be the opinion of the Baal Shem would say, don't deny the experience that you're having. Just untangle them. Know what's the klipa, what's the negative force that's surrounding this. That's the narrative part of it. Okay, that's nonsense. Get rid of the narrative, but you're having this tremendous urge of anger. Use it. So every single experience, bar none, every single experience has elements that has kedusha in it, has something powerful, holy in it. And kedusha, definition of kedusha, holy, is something that's furthering self, furthering others, furthering the world. That's what kedusha is.
Life affirming,
life affirming, a life evolving, like moving things forward. That's what holiness is.
Do you know the work of David Hawkins?
Yeah, familiar.
Yeah, he measures the different things.
Yeah, measures things, right.
Life affirming, and
right.
I forgot what he calls the other ones.
But the Baal Shem Tov actually says it. This is what he says. He says that the definition of holy is something that furthers things. The definition of unholy is things that end things. So if I'm talking to you, this is the Baal Shem would say this. If I'm talking to you now for an hour, and I feel energized after the experience, that was holy. If I feel depleted after the experience,
then it ended something.
Then it's klipa. It's negative. How do you know when you're in a good relationship with your spouse? When you're in a relationship with anybody, but when you're intimate with them, you feel more energy, not the opposite.
Not depleted.
Not depleted. Depletion is always an expression of your own ego. The need for something. You felt this urge. You depleted, and you're done. You're finished. You're done with it. Positivity, holiness is something that generates more, because that's God. What is God?
Infinite.
creator. Let's say
Right.
infinite creative force. If we have to give
Right.
any type of definition, of course, there's no definition. But if you have to give a definition, you look at creation. So the creator is the creator of creation, which means the generator, the energy, the engine that's moving the world forward is the creator's energy.
Right. So everything that moves that forward
Is divine.
Okay, so that would be right. So meaning if the energy that I just expended was in a holy way, I've moved it forward.
Then
and
you
I
will
have
feel more. Then you'll feel more now energy.
If I was going the other way,
If you're hooked into the energy source, which what Chassidus is called the shefa, or the flow, if you wish. If you are hooked into the source, then the more you give, the more actually starts
The more
flowing
you
through you.
get.
Exactly.
right?
So when you finish a conversation, or you finish being intimate, or you finish speaking to your child, or you finish something, you're like, whoa, I have so much energy now. I feel so alive, and I want to connect. I want to do something. I want to create something.
So if I have a work day that's brutal, and I kind of feel beaten down at the end, your message for that is, like, I get very energized from these
Right.
conversations.
Right. But if you don't feel energy from something, it's very hard to measure throughout a day. But I would say, like, brutal throughout the day. Was everything that experienced throughout the day? Everything was brutal? Or like the last 10 minutes? Or how would you measure it? But if you come out of work every single day depleted, you're probably doing the wrong thing in this world.
Right.
That's it. You should come out energized. Now, it doesn't mean every single day you're going to have the highest level of energy, but you're going to have to come out. You have to, if it's kedusha, if it's holy, which means if it's something that resonates deeply with your soul, that's fulfilling for yourself, you have to come out with that experience of energized, more connected.
So you connect the same maybe to money well spent.
Everything.
So-
But by the way, everything. Every time if you want to know this is from the Badichiver, but it's a very, very deep teaching. It says if you want to know if you want to do the right thing or the wrong thing, like what do you like? I don't know. Should I give money to this? Let's say charity. Should I give this guy a charity or not?
How are you going to feel after?
Yeah.
That's the measure.
That's the measure.
So when it comes to, let's say, having intimacy with one's wife,
Yeah.
right? When a man completes his experience, there's usually a depletion of energy.
Okay, but there's a depletion of. So there's a pasuk in Tehillim that says that my father and mother like left me and Hashem gathered me. It's in chapter 27. And Rashi writes there that this one turns to this side of the bed, this one turns to that side of the bed. And then Hashem gathers me, which means if after intimacy, I don't want to talk about this because I don't like doing this on public, but let's very quickly, if after intimacy a person experiences more love for their spouse, I'm not talking about physical, of course, because it's physically you gave something out.
Right.
I'm just talking about you don't just turn around to the other side of the bed and go to sleep. But afterwards, you feel like you want to talk to them, you want to be with them, you feel more yichud, unified with them, then it's kedusha. But if afterwards you just want to turn around and go to sleep, that shows that it was just a selfish act. It was not a real intimacy. It was not yichud. It was not kedusha.
Interesting.
That's the barometer. I'm not talking about the physicality. Of course, sometimes you can run a marathon and you feel very good
Right.
about
You feel
yourself.
very tired.
Yeah, you feel tired, but you feel
Right.
great. You feel a lot of energy, but you can't stand up. I'm talking about like energy.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
If you go through an experience, you feel like, oh, I feel like, okay, now I really, yeah, physically I'm tired. I got it. But do I just turn to the other side of the bed?
Okay, so when I say brutal work day, there's two kinds.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
There's ones that's like a brutal workout.
Right. And then you feel good.
Right.
Right. That's great.
Eventually,
Right. Yeah. I'm saying you're feeling good. It was hard. It was like you ran a marathon, but you feel good about it. And then sometimes you feel like beaten down. It's different.
Right. And you're calling this kedusha, this klipa.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not calling it, by the way.
Right.
The Baal Shem Tov actually says these words. It's a radical understanding of this. It's a very different understanding than most people understand kedusha and klipa. Right? You'll say kedusha is holy, something that's transcendent. Shem says no. Kedusha means furthering, bettering. Klipa means separation. That's
moving
it.
things forward.
Yeah. Moving things forward.
So going back to an emotion, right? So there's an emotion that's coming at me that I'm blocking or resisting in some way, then that blocking of it is klipa.
Correct.
So take it fully through.
Take it fully through. Feel it. Experience it.
No matter what it is.
No matter what it is.
Right. Strip it from the narrative of it. Feel the rawness of it. Expand.
Correct.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Correct. Now the Alter Rebbe, by the way, just to get back to the Alter Rebbe's, this is called Allah Samindis, the elevation of feelings. The Alter Rebbe says it's not for every person. He says only for the tzaddik. But it's very interesting that that he says How could you actually elevate this feeling when you're actually under the feeling? Which means, let me say it like this: there are what the Alter Rebbe is really worried about with these emotions is that let's say you're a person that deals with anger. Okay, let's say you're a guy. You always get angry. This is like my thing. I'm always angry. Okay. One day you're angry and you said, you know what? I'm going to strip it from the narrative and beat it with the sensation. I'm going to feel the raw energy. Who are you fooling? Like that
right, this horse has been riding me for years.
Exactly. It's so above you. You're not going to. What it's going to be is you're going to be more angry, and it's going to feed the beast. That's what Alter Rebbe says. You have to know which emotion and when. Like sometimes there's an emotion that comes to you that is not familiar. Like you're not an angry guy. I don't get it. You're not an angry person. But one day you're like, that's an emotion that I can control. I could actually do something with this. Alter Rebbe wouldn't have an issue with that. That's not the issue. The issue is when it's an uncontrolled emotion, which you're always feeling. So that's why you have to also, the blanket statement is, yes, of course you can do this, but you should also know yourself. Like know if this is like really applicable to you, or you're like still
right. If you're encountering it on a corner, or if you've been walking.
Exactly. Perfect analogy. If you're encountering a corner, then do with it. If you can't, then you're probably just going to mess yourself up. But any other feeling that's coming to you, and feel it deeply. And
so, what's the solution for the other way? There was I heard this. I didn't watch the recording, but apparently Tony Robbins was doing a live event. When 9/11 happened.
Oh, during the event.
When it happened, I think he was in Australia or somewhere where the time zone was very different. So at 9 a.m. here was the middle of the night there. Apparently, he had ended that day's seminars, and they go long. So I'm not the biggest fan of his, but I went once with a few.
I'm not really familiar anyways. But I know who he is. Yeah,
he's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, he brought everyone back in, obviously because this just happened. So not everyone's going to go to sleep now. Right. There's a lot of energy. So he brought everyone back in, and he asked people what they're feeling, and people gave different emotions. And again, I heard this secondhand, so but the point is still valid.
Yeah.
And he asked people their emotions, and one person was disgusted, one person was afraid, one person was whatever, disgusted, excited, ready to take on the world, whatever emotions they were going through. And then he asked them, when was the last time you felt that? And he did this with each one. And his point that he was making, that most of you are feeling feelings that you're attributing to the event. Right. But this is your go-to feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
25 times a day.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So what does one do with that? Meaning, what's the solution for those ones that trip us up a lot?
Certain emotions that you constantly repeat them, and you're constantly tripping up on these same exact emotions.
Yeah, so let's say anger is probably one that I struggle with more than, say, I don't know. Let's say something makes me feel disgusted. That's not so common. That's a new one. It's a new emotion. I didn't see this game. When I woke up in the morning, I'm fairly certain I'm encountering anger at some point.
So this is a lot of work, because what you really have to do is you have to create new neuron connections in your brain. Like there's a certain go-to narrative that anything that is remotely connected to anger will trigger that story, and then it downloads from your subconscious, and you have no control. So we have to start creating new ways, new pathways of thinking about the experiences. What I would do, I would say, is try to figure out what some of the triggers are, right? And start slowly creating instantaneous responses to those new triggers. Now, it's not going to work for a longer period of time. Like, I'm not saying like if it triggers, you're not going to become angry from this event. No, but the first reaction when this thing happens, this triggers, your first reaction is you scream. Okay, now your first reaction is you're going to make a bracha and drink a cup of water. Then you're going to scream.
Got it.
You got it? Once you start training, you have to really like hardwire the subconscious. Hijack the system, correct. So, but you can't ever tell the system, I'm never going to do this again. That never works. Right? Your ego is going to like fight for that anger. Like it's like, because that's the story that it knows. It's not letting go. So you tell the anger, you'll be there. I'm just going to shelve you for 30 seconds, 10 seconds. It's like a compartmentalization of emotions. It's like a very interesting way of thinking about emotions, is that if we can compartmentalize them, like to give it its space, Not to say I'm not going to become angry, because you need to. Your ego is going to fight too strong. Say I will become angry, but in 30 seconds, in 10 seconds. And then the 10 seconds becomes 12 seconds and 15 seconds. And what you're doing is you're basically training yourself to have another instinctive reaction by doing those responses. So slowly that ends up working. But the main I would say the error of people thinking about any type of character trait that they're trying to work on is that we're going to beat it down. I'm going to beat down that thing,
right?
And that never works. You know, the Kutzgerber once said that if you ever try to beat down an emotion, you get two negative emotions. One is the emotion that doesn't leave because it never goes away, and now the arrogance that think you can beat it down. So that never works. So don't try to beat it. Don't try to say, "Oh, I'm for now, and I'm never going to become angry." This is not my. No.
Don't wrestle with the bear.
Don't wrestle with the bear. No. Compartmentalize it. Say like, okay, I understand. Look, I need to be angry because that guy really did something, and I'm a really angry person. That doesn't make any sense. Go, fine, good. You have that place. This is also a way to do this, by the way, like with davening. Let's say you're trying to concentrate in davening, and other thoughts come into your head, which are very important. Like I need to think about it. Never push it aside. Like, okay, I'm going to resist that thought, because the more you resist it, the more it persists. It doesn't work. What you tell that thought is, yeah, that's an excellent thought, by the way. Yes, I actually have to meet this guy tomorrow. This is great. I'm going to think about this in 30 seconds. I'll put it on the shelf. In 30 seconds, I'll get back to you. Let me get back to davening. So the moment you're able to compartmentalize your consciousness and your feelings, you're able to deal with them in a better way. This all goes back to the beginning of the conversation, which is the more you can untangle yourself, the more you can actually observe self from that place of observing the story that's happening, the more easier it is for you to actually navigate that and shelve those emotions. So I think, again, back to your question, so we shouldn't get too long-winded, is that like, try to create new responses without actually saying, I'm not going to have all that response. I will have that response. I will be angry. If you don't do what I want you to do in the office, I'm going to get angry at you. But I'm not going to scream at you right away. I'm going to scream at you after I make a blessing and a bracha on a cup of water.
So you're saying ones that are not familiar to a person, expand.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
You walked around the corner, this bumped into you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Expand it.
Take it.
Expand it.
This is God. This is the divine.
Correct. This is divine. You're feeling this anger. You're feeling this raw emotion. Amazing. Do something.
The ones that are coming to you 25 times a day. This is instinct.
Correct. This is like things that are already part of your subconscious. So it's much more difficult. And like the Alter Rebbe says, yeah. How could you lift it if you're under it? It's not going to work. You're just going to be under it and under it, under it, under it.
Let's pivot for a few minutes. I know you wrote a few books on breathing and meditation and things like that. So meditation has an interesting rap in the Jewish community.
Yeah.
How would you distinguish between Jewish meditation, non-Jewish meditation, and the role? So often the language of Avodah Zarah gets thrown in this conversation. What are we talking about?
Okay, so this is a very good question. I think the first reason why there's a lot of misconceptions about this is because of the word meditation. So since the word meditation is not a Jewish word, and it's an English word, it comes actually from a Greek word which means centering. So therefore, it's like, what's that word? We never heard about it. We know what davening is. It's translated as prayer. But what's that word meditation? So I think the immediate reaction to a person that hears the word meditation is like, what's that word? So if you noticed, I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of my books, I don't use the word meditation. I don't want to use the word anymore because I think it's like it's a word that associates people. It's overused, and it's also it triggers a certain type of reaction when they see that word. So for years, I had like a chabur of very serious like Rosh Hashivas and Maggid Shiurim and Bar Park, very Chassidish, with white sock, very Chassidish Hasidic Jews, and we learned like a very deep levels of yichudim, different things from the Ari, from other spiritual practices. And I told them, we're never going to use the word meditation there because otherwise your wife's never going to let you come here. So we're not going to use that word. We're just going to use Avodas Hashem. We're doing Avodas Hashem. We're doing Hashem service. So I think that's the reason, because there's no word for it, but doesn't mean that it's not there.
If you use words, hispaninus or dveikus.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Hispaninus, dveikus, all these words. Correct. These are all words that are familiar. We know what they are. We know more or less they are. And all the written texts that speak about these type of practices don't use these. They're speaking in Hebrew, so they don't use that word meditation. So it's a new word. And all great tzaddikim throughout history, all great spiritual masters, all great Mukabalim, Rebbes, all had a spiritual practice. Whatever the practice was, it could be breathing, it could be chanting, it could be davening, it could be learning, whatever the practice was. There was a certain spiritual practice that they did that was allowed them to have, to experience expansive consciousness and to have.
I read somewhere recently when prophets would go to prophesize, whatever that meant.
Yeah.
They would go into nature with drums or music.
Correct,
and stuff
sure.
like that. Yeah.
Sure, of course, yeah.
So that was that's a spiritual practice.
These are spiritual practices.
Right. If they told their mother they're going to do meditation at that point.
Correct, but that was prophecy.
out.
That was B'nai Nevi'im. Everyone was prophets, and that was like we spoke in the beginning.
Prophetic time.
That was a prophetic time. That there was no schools for Talmud. You didn't learn Gemara when you went to yeshiva. What do you learn? You learn prophecy. That's what everyone was learning. The Gemara says that there was Kaflaim, Kiyetz Mitzrayim. There was like over a million two prophets during this 400-year time period in the first Beis HaMikdash time.
Over what?
Over the 400-year time period of the first Beis HaMikdash was over 1 million prophets.
Oh wow!
And the Medrash Shir Hashirim says that was only men, and then it was also women. So you're talking about 2.5 million prophets. There were no 2.5 million people on the planet at that time. You understand? So you're talking about a very short period of time. Everyone was a prophet, which means prophecy was they were schooled in prophecy. They were called the children of prophets. There was So I think the word is the real problem. That actual word.
The meditation word.
Yeah, the word meditation. So that's why I don't like using it either, because it's like
you stopped using it. You didn't use it in any of your books.
Generally not. Stopped. Okay. I really like using it because of that. Because it's like it
throws people off.
It throws people off, and right away you're okay. It sounds like something Eastern or something not Jewish and something. So I'll use regular words that what the sages use, what the rabbis use, what the tzaddikim use. To use their words. If it's Hisbonenus or Hisbadadus or Dveikus or Yechudim, what Sirufim, whatever the word was used, I'll use that word. Also, people should become more familiar. You're asking what is the general difference? That's
is there something inherently wrong according to some?
It depends what you talk about meditation. A lot of
a mindfulness meditation.
Yeah, a lot of the things are just just centering self and just being present. There's nothing. There's no. A lot of it's complicated, because I would say like this, that there are certain Hindu practices, or even certain type of religious Buddhist practice, Hinayana versus Mahayana. There's different types of Buddhist that actually have certain chants and certain sacred, chanting of different names and things like that could have undertones of Avodah Zarah. So you have to be careful what you're doing. But the way most people think about meditation today in a modern world is more mindfulness. It's just about being present and being, focused on your breath and focus on your mind. Like that's
right.
Not,
so someone standing up in front of a room and saying, "Close your eyes, take a few."
Yeah, there's nothing. That's like someone telling get up and stretch. It's a mind stretch. It's just there's nothing wrong. I mean, there's not even nothing wrong. There's nothing. It's not even a conversation to say anything wrong.
It's not kedusha. It's not.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing. Whatever. It's like you're stretching your limbs. To make yourself. You need to stretch your mind. You stretch your heart. You stretch your body. So I don't think it's anything. You're talking about deeper, like transcendental meditation. There's other type of things that could have undertones of different types of mantras and things like that could be problematic.
They could be repeating mantras from.
Yeah, usually they're the Veda mantras. They're mantras that actually are names of idols and pagan things. So that could be that you should stay away from if you don't know what you're doing.
Right, understood. But in general, in meditation.
No, today, what we call meditation today in the West is not real meditation. It's just that's it's Kinderspiel. It's like it's child play. It's whatever. It's basic human things, just to be a healthy human being, just to focus. That's it.
Okay, and what is this concept of Avodah Zarah? People throw it around. What does it mean?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. Avodah Zarah means any time you separate something from the everything. When you subscribe powers to something that's outside the everything, that's Avodah Zarah.
So the guy in the story who saw the woman, and ascribed certain beauty to her as opposed to,
could technically be a trace of Avodah Zarah. Correct. Obviously it's very subtle. That's a very subtle form of Avodah Zarah. But Avodah Zarah means this ascribing to any particular thing versus the everything. When I say this is
right, very similar to, is this different than what you were saying about a feeling? Once I expand the feeling,
it's the same idea. That's exactly.
But we use such strong language around Avodah Zarah that someone shouldn't even.
Because Avodah Zarah, what
you say like Gila Raya, Shrichas Damim, right?
Yeah, Gila, Avodah Zarah.
Okay, so these are the three things not to die for.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first two we understand. don't be intimate with these people.
Right.
Don't kill.
Correct.
Don't
Correct.
kill anyone
it's
unless they're
makes
coming to
sense,
kill
yeah.
you. Okay, what is this avodah zarah? What am I doing? Meaning, if I'm not expanding a feeling, and that's avodah zarah.
No, okay, you're talking about a very subtle thing. We're talking about really ascribing powers.
So actually praying. So if there's a Hindu religion that's
If you're praying to the sun or to the moon or to any power in the universe. By the way, you can be an idol worshiper of money.
Money, for sure.
Exactly. If
could be, most people probably
correct, but yeah, yes and no. I don't know. Okay, that's a good conversation. But the moment you subscribe something that it has power in and itself, you're cutting yourself off from the source of life.
I totally did until I found out about inflation. I was like, oh, it's not so powerful after all.
Exactly. Okay, fine. So maybe that's Hashem's way of showing that there's no avodah zarah. It's a way. The reason why the Torah says that like it's a cardinal sin. It's like the Torah is saying is on a deeper level. The Torah is saying is either you're alive with everything or you're dead. When you subscribe something, when you separate something from the everything, you're dead. That's the definition of death. It's just giving an interpretation of what you're experiencing, because either you're one with the unified force of everything that's giving life to everything. The moment I subscribe to this particular thing, I just separated this from everything. That's death. So you're experiencing death in that spiritual way of living by connecting to that thing. So the Torah is
we just terminated the energy.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly the same narrative. You just terminated the energy. You just cut it off from the source. So you cut yourself off from the source.
So is when people are, and earlier today, I interviewed a guy who, he's breathwork certified training and different things. He's from Sephardic guy, and had a very interesting life journey. And he says sometimes when he's leading a breathwork, people ask him that, is it avodah zarah, right? Like throw that word.
Right.
I mean, what? Is there any relationship between the two things? Would it be as crazy as someone saying is a shvichas damim? I mean,
that doesn't make any sense. Someone's doing breath work. I don't know how that can be able to. Is he chanting? What is he doing?
He's taking them through a breath.
He's just breathing with them. No, well, breathing. What do you mean? Everyone breathes. I mean, like. Well,
I know you're taking them through a specific breath. Of course,
it depends what you're doing by breath. Are you saying like inhale the oxygen
saying,
of the universe and like the power? I mean, it depends how you like contact. If you're just breathing with someone, saying let's inhale and exhale very slowly, just to gain oxygen and be focused. It's like anything. It's like someone saying, "Here's a cup of soup," and someone says, "I don't." There's no.
So let's say, where does it? It doesn't say in Gemara that. Should I destroy the world just because of a few fools?
Yes, correct.
Or should I destroy the sun and the moon?
Yeah, yeah.
So everyone, I mean, there's probably a worshiper of everything that has a little bit of anything. Someone's worshiping it.
Correct. That's true.
Right? So
you're asking why these specific things?
Like, why am I getting excited? Because some person decided an elephant is their god. Why do I have to feel different about elephants or feel different about?
You don't have to feel different about elephants. The question is
no, meaning even if they have the.
I got to know that's not the problem. The problem is not the problem is not them. The problem is you. The problem is how you're relating to it. In other words, if you're relating to the elephant as a sacred animal, as something that's unique and sacred, an embodiment of some type of divine energy or divine quality, then you're the idol worshiper. If you're not, what does that have to do?
Right. Meaning, if I'm walking into a room and there happens to be a.
It depends. It depends.
Meaning, what's the difference if they're chanting to anyone?
For you?
Yeah, so I go into a meditation and this person happens to start chanting to the Virgin Mary. I mean, what does it have to do with me?
Okay, that's
if I'm not buying into.
Okay, so that's another question. That's another question, right? The question is if energetically you're affected by other people's energy. That's what you're really asking, right?
Okay, let's
see. Right? Because you're saying I don't really subscribe to this person's energy. I don't really believe in anything that they believe in. But could a person be affected by another person's energy?
Okay, let's see.
Okay, if that's the question, that's a real question. I think first of all, it depends how sensitive you are. I think sensitive people do pick up other people's energy. You can sometimes walk into a room and a person's angry. You don't even know it, but you feel anger in the room. Some people do that. Some people not. We're susceptible to energy. But I think every single person, there's a certain resonance, a certain type of.
But it's not what I'm. Okay, fine. I mean, what you're describing is, and I understand that. I've, somewhat, I don't know, proponent, but in my own healing experience, I've been. I don't know how much you know of my story, but for many years I spoke about being sexually abused as a child and the journey that I had coming that, and then more recently I've spoken about porn addiction and dealing with the. I've been in recovery. Today I don't consider myself part of 12 steps. I'm part of recovery, but
you're involved
for many years I was. And up until I encountered ayahuasca, and it kind of changed my relationship with a lot of things, Judaism included. I've sat with people in that setting who made me very uncomfortable. I felt the Christian influence, in which
Right.
that's very much in that world with many people. And
Right.
this is not my guy.
Right.
Okay. But it doesn't mean I was avodah zarah just because that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Meaning,
but the question is, are you?
Meaning, I happen to be sensitive to it. Okay,
Right.
so I don't like it. I didn't enjoy it. I'm going into a space where I'm looking to heal. I don't want someone chanting
Right.
to the Virgin Mary. Good.
Right.
Is that the same thing
As
as avodah zarah? Does that have any connection when people use these languages?
No, you're not doing the avodah zarah. No,
Right.
no, right. Or else the facilitator is chanting and doing other things. That could be. But if the other person's sitting in a room doing avodah zarah, let's say you're walking down the street and this guy worshiping avodah zarah,
Well, this is more walking down the street.
I got it. You're together in the same room, the same presence. That's the question. So, like, do you want to be surrounded energetically?
So I happen not wanting to be.
Right.
But meaning, is that
You're not either worshiping. No, that's not a question.
Right. It's not a standard.
No. But this is, of course not. This is, of course not. It's not even a question. It's not even a question. The question is if you're about association, by osmosis.
Right. And personally, I chose not to be in that. And
Correct.
I worked with a guy who's of Islamic background, and I'm very comfortable with his.
Yeah, whatever.
Right. His perspectives on those concepts when he talks about it. Okay, fine. So that's a comfort level, but that's not the same. Meaning around.
No, there's no avodah zarah if another person is doing avodah zarah in a room with you.
Right. Around breath work, around psychedelics, around a lot of these healing modalities.
I think a lot of these things are all they're all punched. They're all like pushed into this one barrel.
Spirituality.
Yeah, and somehow all these things are linked to the 60s and to the hippies and to Ram Dass and to Hinduism. It's like but they're all separate, different things, and everyone has their own Torah Shlema. Everyone has their own, whole understanding of itself. Right. So to hodgepodge and put all these things together in one big pot, it's not honest.
Right. I was speaking to the artist Michal Muchnik.
Yeah.
So I spoke to him a few weeks ago, and he's like, listen, I love the healing and stuff like that, but I grew up in the 60s, so this whole psychedelic movement is not, right, it's not for me. And I said, I hear you. I wasn't around then, but my feeling is from reading about the times then and listening to some of the speakers then and people today who are engaging in it, and is that then it came from it seems to a lot of people were embracing it from some sort of spiritual search, some sort of godly search and meaning. And today I think it's just, for the most part, just straight suffering.
Yeah.
People don't want to suffer anymore.
Yeah, people don't want to suffer. I agree. People shouldn't suffer. I don't know if this is the right path. I'm not such a big proponent of these things. I'm not. I'm not really sure. First of all, I never have done any of these type of things, but I also, the question is if some people were telling me that, maybe there was a shaman involved and maybe there was some type of chanting, which that could be.
Right. That's what I want to know. So
but that's like positioning the experience in a like almost a death practice, like connecting to dead, and I don't know, that could be very spiritually, energetically not healthy. Avodah zarah, I'm not sure. I don't know exactly what the person was chanting or not.
I'm saying, does that matter? Or does it matter what somebody's believing?
If the facilitator is projecting and presenting the experience in a certain way. Certain people that certainly, if you're not familiar with your own little inner journey, then you're going to be susceptible to that person's energy much more. So we have to be careful with that. The other thing is, I don't want to get into this, but I'll just tell you, because it just happened the last few weeks, which is very strange, that a few people came over to me. Like, I would say for spiritual reasons, there's zero reason to do this. I think spiritually you can do this with other, real inner work, not like,
Right, I would agree with that.
But in terms of like healing, there's a lot to say.
I find it kind of lame from a spiritual perspective.
Right. No, it's nothing. It's meaningless. I think spirituality has to become something within. You have to like work on that spirituality. It's like the Kotzker one said that people want to change overnight and they want to have a good night's sleep. So it's like, okay, that's the type of spirituality. It's like, it's
right. I mean, for those reasons.
So I'm talking about a person that's really, really traumatized.
Someone who's really struggling.
Yeah, really struggling.
Someone who's.
So the interesting thing is, again, I don't have
a lot of people who are stuck don't know they're stuck.
Right. It's true. It's true.
Someone at work told me recently, I don't have any blind spots.
It's true. I agree. I understand that. There was this two things that, let's just say like
but you can be very critical of it. I'm not.
Yeah.
For me, it helped me.
Yeah. No. The reason why I'm critical, I'll tell you what it is. Besides avodah zarah issue, let's say it is issue or not issue. Okay. Put that aside. And the person's not going for spiritual reasons. The person's going because they're really stuck and healing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's, I think most people that I know are going into that path, especially in this background. what are you looking for another
Right,
God?
right.
Barely
Right.
able to believe the one that
Correct. I got it. I
It's
understand.
not.
I understand.
You know,
Right.
it's I'm done suffering, and I
There's
heard a guy got help here. Yeah.
listen. You can't argue that. And this is what I want to say is like this: that there was just because Hashgacha Pratis, this is like
Yeah.
happened by divine providence. That a few couples came over to me in literally the last 2 weeks, and then I realized it was a pattern. I got it was frightening to me. A couple came over to me. This is like literally in the last 10 days from last week Sunday. First couple comes in, they have an experience, and they went through. There's a lot of trauma in their life, really hard lives. I'm not diminishing, God forbid, anything that they experience. Really harsh. So they decided to go. The husband, the wife said like she doesn't remember traumatized. She's like stunted a little bit emotionally, but she's Hasidic, so she maybe sometimes the emotions are not so open. They're fine. And she said she went through this type of experience, and she realized that when 4 years old she was molested. Okay, that's that's big, and she was molested by her father, and that's the worst possible. I mean, I don't have to explain it. Fine, that's one story. Then I heard, and in the next few days, a few women together with their husbands came and told me the exact same story at the same age. I'm thinking like, this is anecdotal. I don't have like real evidence for this. I don't have like hard evidence, but I'm thinking to myself, why 4 years old? Why by their father? What something is, and I realized, first of all, you need a lot of preparation to enter into any type of experience, any type of mind altering experience. I don't care if it's like, like medical experience, or any therapy, any type of therapy. You have to really go through like ready to open yourself up, and you need a lot of integration. And I think what happened to these people, in my opinion, we got it, and is that they weren't molested. I don't think they were molested because it was three people alone, exact same age. I think what it was,
and all working with the same medicine, same people,
same, yeah. And I you know what I thought it was?
Go ahead.
And I get this is again, it's a conjecture. I have no hard evidence of this. I think is that there's a certain age in a person when you're young, especially a girl and also a guy, where you start becoming familiar with your body. That's why we have options. There's a certain level where a boy becomes a boy. It becomes kind of weird that they're a boy. They recognize that there's a difference between a boy and a girl, and one has one anatomy, one has another anatomy. If you're sometimes raised in a very insular community and you start becoming aware of your body, there's actually no one to talk to. So I'd imagine that when they became aware of their own sexuality, they wanted to approach their parents, but there was no language. The parents shut them down, and they interpret this experience somehow rejecting what they felt or how they felt about their body with their parent figure or someone that would potentially was able to help them to understand what their body's going through, with a type of molestation. And it was like a mental molestation, right? It wasn't a physical molestation. It was like a more psychological molestation. They interpreted something that was physical. The parents had no tools in their world even to access this information to help them, and no one's at fault. And whoever's at fault is at fault. And they're going to walk around thinking that their father molested them, and and they have good relationship with their father, and everything's ruined. And I'm thinking, if they would go in correctly and they would have like someone that's really helping them through this process and properly integrating them, they were dealing with therapists and people that were licensed psychologists and people that really understood the involvement of the they would be in a much healthier space without just taking these people, throwing them into experience, giving them experience. They don't have the tools to untangle their experience and to give context and to give understanding of their experience. And they're going to interpret the immediate reaction is that I was molested. So that's why
right. It's hard for me to comment because I'm not it's kind of hearing it secondhand, but I would say my own experience kind of supports that. And I see it with a lot of others as well, where people who went from kind of walking around their life, doing their own thing, straight into a medicine experience. Oftentimes, there is no language to process any of these things.
And it makes it worse. It actually makes and damaging them.
It could just be too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be too much.
Too much or not a way of understanding it. It's like, God forbid, someone else, God forbid.
But sometimes it's necessary.
Listen, it's like the question of like chemotherapy, let's say. Chemotherapy is killing all your cells of your body. Is that good for you or bad for you? Well, it depends. If you have cancer, it's very good for you. Right. If you're really, really sick, that's something going to help. That's going to be very helpful.
Right. I see this. This is cracking someone open.
So maybe if a person needs chemotherapy, like, with a lot of seichel and a lot of this, but a regular, it's more, that's why yes, every individual case has to be analyzed correctly. You have to see where the person's coming from, where they're going, how stuck they are. Like it has to be done with seichel. It's like today it became so prevalent and like it's so cheap, and it's very scary to me.
Right,
It's very,
and I
it's very
understand
scary.
that it grew very quickly,
Yeah,
very
very
fast.
quickly, and and unfortunately in the film community, very quickly, and that people don't, for better or for worse, the situation of, and this probably has to do with the Holocaust and post traumatic trauma for both from people that were raised in the 70s and 80s. they were raised by survivors. They were raised by very highly traumatized people, and there's generational trauma.
Mhm.
And people went through these hard times, and they didn't speak about life. Period. No one said like, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm feeling hurt.
Pure physical survival.
Yeah, it was survival. Like I feed you, and that's it. I'm good. You know, and not blaming parents because they didn't have the tools. They didn't.
That was what was going
That
on.
was going on. That was the world that was going on. It was a purely survival level. So a lot of kids that was raised in this generation, they don't have like basic skills of survival in terms of like emotional survival and mental survival, like to give understanding to their life, to express feelings, to be open about their feelings, to be open about their own traumas or own experiences. They don't feel vulnerable. They don't feel expressive. They don't feel they can do that. They don't have even the language to do that.
I have a lot of faith that these things will sort themselves out.
Absolutely.
Meaning you have cultures which have, these are very powerful tools, probably some of the most powerful
Correct.
tools
No, absolutely,
on
absolutely,
the planet, and
Absolutely.
we'll learn how to.
absolutely. I just
how
want
to
to say,
work with
I
them.
would say one thing, which is a funny statement. The Rebbe Rashab once said, the fifth Chabad Rebbe once said that the Frum culture is 50 years behind the secular culture. And he said it like, he said it, but there's something very, very deep about that, because I feel like also in the Frum culture today, a lot of the conversation for people that need healing, and a lot of healing is very much trauma based, very much focused on trauma, on let's say focus on the negative, and focus on like healing the negative, dealing with the negative, speaking about the negative. And I think that's not where cutting edge psychology is holding any longer. Cutting edge psychology is redemptive. It's about and cutting edge spirituality and ruchnias and chassidus. It's about giving people new ways of thinking about themselves, and the possibility of thinking about yourself as someone that's already perfect and whole, and in the place of the wholeness, in the place of perfection, dealing with your imperfection. So there's two ways how to think about this, about yourself. Like one is, I'm a broken person for trauma, for the existence. I'm broken. I'm trying to heal myself. And but my definition of self is that I'm a broken person. The other definition of self is actually I'm whole. And the reason why I'm saying this is you're whole is it actually goes back to what we were talking before. You're part of,
Right.
and you're part of the everything. Like if in the consciousness of unity, nothing is actually happening to you. You're part of what is happening. So you can't have any trauma. Like the tree doesn't have trauma when there's a storm, right? The tree is going through the storm.
There's a narrative that gets layered on it. Again.
Correct. In other words, the world is happening, right? You're happening in this world, and then you're giving a narrative to that happening. But in the highest level of who you are, you're happening.
But what you're talking about, a lot of the concepts you're talking about,
Yeah.
I started going to therapy in 2008.
Yeah.
And did everything I can, EMDR and I don't know, DBT and everything I can think of. It eventually became 12 steps, and whatever was available to me, I took crushing crystals and drinking them, and acupuncture, and I just wanted to heal.
I've never heard about crushing crystals and drinking them. Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
Everything. I don't know what everything under the sun.
Okay, fine.
It's like if it can work, if it can help me, why not? There was a shift that happened with psychedelics that a lot of what you're talking about, I don't think I would have understood what you're saying.
Okay.
The oneness, the connection, the expansiveness, the seeing it.
Right. You see, once that shift happens, the conversation stops about trauma.
Correct.
It's a different conversation.
Yeah, it's not about trauma.
Exactly. That's why I think a lot of unfortunately, it's fortunate and unfortunate. A lot of rabbis today, popular, talk about trauma and talk about trauma, which is actually better than not talking about trauma,
Right.
So that's already a step up. But it's not really what people are needing anymore. That's
Because
not.
they haven't done enough psychedelics.
I don't know if they haven't, or they haven't been. They're not enlightened. In other words, they haven't really got to the place of yichud. Like, when you get to that, what you're experiencing, whatever you're experiencing, that point of knowing that is, it's not about trauma. It's about being larger than the trauma and holding that space that can hold that place of the trauma as well. Being that place of the wholeness of existence that contains also the drama of ego, of the experiences of ego.
Right. The other side of that, I understand exactly what you're saying. The other side of that is that someone who's living in the trauma will have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
So meaning,
so they have to be induced to the experience.
Exactly.
So I think
language.
you can do it with like deep prayer and deep meditation and deep kavana, deep yichudim. I think it could be done without actually psychedelics. So I think it could be done.
So I had a very interesting. I've had very many experiences very connected to Judaism and different concepts. But there was one experience that I had once where it was like some childhood resentments, and sometimes in there can be a sense of, do you want to go into this or you don't want to go into this? Do you want to open this door? Once you open the door, then you get thrown around the room. But
right.
You just not to. So I said, okay, let me go into this room. Let me understand it. And when I went in, I was very surprised at what I encountered. But what it was a very deep anger that felt like a good anger at Shabbos being destroyed for me. Like, why did you tie up? Why was so much trauma from other people and control and whatever garbage? Why'd it have to be associated with Shabbos? I didn't expect to see this. I didn't. It wasn't what I.
Right.
I would have never guessed in a million years that I would have opened that door, and that's what I was upset at. Like, how did you destroy this? And after a few months afterwards, after that experience, I was involved with this charity campaign, this $50 million charity campaign, a lot of things. So I know Rabbi Yossi Gordon a little bit, Chabad on campus, and he tells me, oh, this is something nice. It's common to write good news to the Rebbe when you something. I said, okay. I felt kind of proud of that I was involved in this thing. What?
Yeah, involved in this project. Okay.
In this project. So I wrote a letter about it. And in response was a scathing letter about Shabbos. Like stuff that people didn't portray the Rebbe was writing. Something about a guy going on a boat and knowing he's going to be going on Shabbos and the person's not respecting Shabbos. Like, whoa, stuff like this. And combined with some other stuff that we're having this experience on ayahuasca like 2 months before, I said, okay, I'm going to put my phone away on Shabbos. I'm going to start doing a little bit more for it. And since then, now it's like Shabbos has become a thing, and I feel it. I feel it deeply. I look forward to it. And I don't know, meaning maybe Shabbos has like had it to offer me in this way, but you
don't know if it was without the experience.
I don't know if without that experience, it would have shook it loose for me. Mm-hmm. It could have been that each time I heard these words, there would have been associations. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying this is everyone's experience. I don't hear this from everyone. I know I have 10 years of experience, working through things, and I still do. I'm still, I'm often with a pen and paper, journaling and working through emotions and different stuff. So, and I know people who are going from journey to journey, hoping that heals them. So I know I approach things possibly in a little bit different way, but those are my experiences.
I got it. I understand. I hear you. I think a lot also has to do in general in life is that we have to be open to experience everything that we think we know in a different way, because or else life becomes very stale, and stagnant. So Shabbos, okay, I know what Shabbos is. The moment you say, you don't know anything.
Right.
We don't know. We have to live with wonderment, with constantly an awe of the evolvement. I spoke about this on Shabbos all this time because it's coming to mind. Talking about suffix, talking about Amalek. Amalek, we read the parsha. Right. Amalek is the idea of is the same numeric value as suffix of doubt. And so I will say, okay, so what's the tikkun? What's like the rectification of doubt? So most people say the rectification of doubt is certainty. Like I'm going from a place of doubt to a place of certainty. But v'nahapachu means you transform it, right? What we said about Baal Shem. So doubt has to be holy. If you transform doubt into certainty, then it's not doubt.
So you want to go down into wonder.
Exactly. Holy wonder, holy doubt. Holy doubt is
doubt like cynicism? Like
the negative doubt is cynicism, but the positive doubt is like I don't know. Actually, I don't know anything. Tell me. I'm wondered. Imagine it's the first time you saw the sunset in your life. You'd be standing there for hours, right? Imagine the first time you met your wife. Yeah. Now, right? Imagine you come home tonight and you say, "Oh, wow, who are you? Wow!" I'm like you meet your children. there's a sense of wonder. And the truth is life is always in a state of becoming, and life is always new.
Right.
And so you talk about Shabbos, talk about anything, talk about open a siddur. Imagine someone told you that they just found a manuscript like hidden in a cave in like somewhere with that of King David's Psalms that he wrote. You're like, whoa, King David's Psalms, really? Where did they find it? You'd be like, every word would be so precious. But okay, you're reading Tehillim, okay, whatever. It's, it's not, we become so dull, desensitized to like life. It's like, but to enter in a state of, which is, by the way, this is actually a blessing of this generation that we live in. The curse of this generation is that relativity became such a phenomenon, not only a scientific phenomenon, but it became such a phenomenon in like human consciousness based on 100 years ago.
Nothing is true.
Nothing is true. So when nothing is true and nothing is meaningless, that's why people don't have gender identity. Everything is fluid. Nothing's really true. Then the question is, what is your truth? And it can be two things. You can do two ways. One way is like, okay, I don't know. Like, okay. Or is like, I can stand up for a truth. I can choose my truth. And when you choose your truth, every single day is a new choice. So if every day you say, yesterday you were a Jew. Okay. This morning when you wake up, are you a Jew?
Right. Choose again.
Choose again. Wow. When you say Shalei Sani Goy, I'm choosing to be a Jew today. I'm choosing to be a man today. I'm choosing to be free today. It's not because yesterday. No, there's no proof. Just because I was yesterday, it doesn't mean anything. Right. Today, every single moment, I'm actually the freedom of the relativity of the absolution of all truth allows a person to actually choose truth every single moment, which is tremendously freeing. Because every single day I'm recreating myself. Today is going to be a different day. Today I'm going to be a Jew today.
Right. So you're saying it's taking that same feeling,
but
and then
transforming it positive.
Right.
Same idea with the doubt. To live with that wonderment. Nothing is expected. I don't expect anything from anybody. I don't expect my wife to act a certain way, my children to act a certain way. Why should I? Because that's what happened yesterday. So what? Right. But imagine every single day, I'm like, wow, you did that for me. That's so nice. You're such a wonderful person. Oh, wow. I'm so appreciative.
My wife and I went to a couples workshop with this woman, very special. And she started with this saying by Marcel Proust, saying, the journey of life, I'm probably misquoted, but the journey of life is to see old pastures with new eyes.
Correct.
Right. And this was the example she...
Well, Marcel Proust, that's his whole, I don't know if you're familiar with his literature, but that's his whole thing about looking at a cup of tea for an hour. That's like, he writes about this. That's Proust. That style of living, which he was Jewish. I mean, that type of aliveness of like, wow, I'm holding tea in my hand. It's like, how does tea come? Like, how did it happen? Like, someone had to like fetch the water. Someone had to make it hot. Like, there's so many things that happen to make this cup of tea. It's like, what a wonder.
Right. The curiosity of life.
The curiosity, the wonderment, to live with wonderment in life is to live like a child. Tikkun is tinuk, it's the same letters. That tikkun, to live with tikkun, is to live like a child. And if you don't live like a child with wonderment, then you have nituk, you have separation, you're cut off. Oh, child is always in wonder.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rav.
My pleasure.
This is great. I hope you feel more energy.
I feel all energized. I've got that. Of course.
Conversation.
Of course. Okay. I feel depleted and energized.
Okay.
All right. Physically and mentally.
Okay.
It was really a pleasure.
Thank you so much. We'll do it again.
Mitzvah Shem.